Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Inhaled Insulin, Fast In, Fast Out, Fits Your Lifestyle, by Omnipod, Simplify Life with Omnipod 5, and by Dexcom G7, the most accurate CGM system.
This is Diabetes Connections with Stacey Sims.
This week, G7 updates, direct-to-watch announcements, and a lot more about what Dexcom sees as the next frontier in CGM. A conversation from ADA with the company's Chief Commercial Officer, Teri Lawver. This podcast is not intended as medical advice. If you have those kinds of questions, please contact your healthcare provider. Welcome to another week of the show. I'm your host, Stacey Sims, and I'm always so glad to have you here. We aim to educate and inspire about diabetes with a focus on people who use insulin. I've been doing the show since 2015. I've been blogging about diabetes since 2007, but I had never been to what everybody calls ADA. It is the American Diabetes Association Scientific Sessions Conference. And holy cow, it was huge. Everybody had told me, be prepared for a ton of walking and a ton of people. And that was very much the case. But it's also very much a professional-facing conference, doctor to doctor, industry to industry. I don't really think it's a conference for patients, certainly, or lay people. I learned a lot. I saw a lot of old friends. And the podcast even got mentioned in an official session. Dr. Bryce Nelson, who I talked about a couple of weeks ago, he included that interview in his remarks about Tzield. So that was really cool to hear about. But by the time this episode airs, it will be almost 2 weeks since ADA. I will be processing what I heard for a long time, I am sure. In that weird time-shifting way of podcasting. While you're hearing this, when this episode airs, I will be on my way to the next conference, Friends for Life. And I will have more interviews from both Friends for Life and ADA. I spoke to more people at ADA, and I'll have those interviews in the weeks to come. I am also starting to announce the speakers for our next 2 Diabetes Connections Presents Mom's Night Out events. These are going to be in Frisco, Texas, that's near Dallas, and in Providence, Rhode Island this fall. So excited to announce that Carrie Sparling will be speaking in Providence. Of course, Carrie wrote 6 Until Me, one of the longest running diabetes blogs. She is a published author as well. She lives with type 1. She's an amazing speaker, and I am thrilled that she will be talking to us in Providence. More speaker announcements to come. Please check Diabetes-Connections for all of the info, how to register, and how to get on our email list for future Mom's Night Out events. We are going to be in many more cities. This is just the beginning. Okay, my guest this week is Dexcom's new Chief Commercial Officer, Teri Lawver. She joined the company earlier this year. Previously, she had worked for Johnson & Johnson and their insulin pump company, Animas. We do spend time here talking about Dexcom and type 2. That was the bulk of the bigger announcements for Dexcom at ADA. I do think it's really important to include the full picture here, but Teri, of course, answers our questions about type 1 and insulin-using customers of Dexcom. This is also where I put in my disclaimer. Longtime listeners are very familiar with this. Dexcom is a sponsor of the show. You will hear an ad from them later on. We have that partnership because we love the product, but that doesn't mean that they get to dictate the content. In other words, they're not telling me what to ask Teri here. They're not dictating what I say to her, that sort of thing. Maybe obvious, maybe not, but to me, it's always important to talk about it. I'll be right back with Teri in just a moment. One of the most frustrating parts of mealtime insulin can be the need to pre-bolus. I have seen my son forget to do it or hesitate because he's not confident about meal timing in a restaurant or, when he's out. Afrezza is unique because it is the only ultra-rapid acting inhaled insulin available. Once you breathe Afrezza into your lungs using the inhaler, insulin appears in your bloodstream in less than 1 minute, and it may start reducing blood sugar in about 12 minutes. Afrezza allows you to inhale your insulin right when food arrives, even unexpectedly, so you can be spontaneous but still in control, without the need for injections at mealtime. Find out more. See if Afrezza is right for you. Go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Afrezza logo. Afrezza can cause serious side effects, including sudden lung problems and low potassium, and is not for patients with chronic lung disease such as asthma or COPD, or for patients allergic to insulin. Tell your doctor if you ever smoked, have ever had kidney or liver problems, a history of lung cancer, or if you are pregnant or breastfeeding. Most common side effects are low blood sugar, cough, and sore throat. Severe low blood sugar can be fatal. Do not replace long-acting insulin with Afrezza. Afrezza is not for use to treat diabetic ketoacidosis. Please see full prescribing information, including boxed warning, medication guide, and instructions for use on afrezza.com/safety. Teri, thank you so much for joining me, and thanks for coming on Diabetes Connections for the first time. I appreciate that.
Oh, Stacey, it's a pleasure to be here.
So much to talk about, lots of announcements, and I don't think I need to welcome you to Dexcom, but you haven't been here very long. Can you talk about coming to the company?
Sure. So I joined Dexcom in January of this year, so just under 6 months with Dexcom. How I got here is, I think, a fun story. So I spent the prior 20 years of my career with Johnson & Johnson, leading a variety of business units there across pharmaceuticals, biotechnology, and medical devices. One of my roles there was as the general manager of Animas Corporation just after J&J had acquired Animas. And so I took over as the GM of this small, I would say scrappy startup pump company who was trying to be a challenger to one really dominant player in the space at that time. And we needed a way to differentiate our pumps. We needed a way to bring something different and better to those we serve. And this was the very early days of CGM. And so we signed an agreement with Dexcom at the time to develop the first CGM-enabled insulin pump. And that is how I first met Kevin Sayer. So that was many years ago. Now fast forward through multiple additional career and job moves. And I was reaching out to Kevin just to do some networking last year, as he and I had stayed in touch over the years. And he talked about this opportunity, and it was just too tremendous to pass up.
Well, as a former Animas customer, I would love to circle around later and talk a little bit more about that. You have a lot of fans still, or Animas had a lot of fans still in the community. It's amazing to think about how the CGM pump situation has changed since that time, right? When it was kind of like, we'll sign an agreement and it'll be coming in the future. And now here we are with all of these AID systems. I guess just to kind of check some boxes, can you speak a little bit about interoperability with the G7 for the rest of the year? I know these are Tandem and Omnipod decisions and announcements, but is there anything you can tell us from Dexcom?
This is definitely one of the most common questions I'm getting, and I think all of my Dexcom colleagues, as well as our Tandem and Insulet colleagues, are getting at this meeting. I can say that our teams are working very, very closely with great urgency to bring the connection of G7 to both of our current pump partners as quickly as possible. The timeline announcements, I think I would defer to the pump companies. Tandem, I believe, has announced that we will be in the market with them later this year, and Insulet's coming, just a few months behind that. So I think we'd have to defer to them to the timeline. But we know that it's a top of mind question for everybody, and we are working with urgency, as I know our partners are, to bring that together. We're really, really excited about these, both the Tandem and Insulet systems partnered with G7.
The G7 launch in general, how is it going in terms, it seems, and I sit in a different place. All I really see is my own household and the community. I'm curious about the insurance. Has insurance gone well? Are the payers kind of cooperating? How's all of that going?
It's a great question, because if we put a product there and people can't get it, we're not living into our mission, right? And so with the G7, when we launched the product, we launched it with a program that we call a denial conversion program. And this is a mechanism whereby there is a cash pay option for people who don't yet have insurance coverage. So it's a way to ensure that people can get access to the product while we wait for the insurance to catch up. Now, that said, we've been really pleased that insurance coverage has accelerated and come on board even much faster than we expected. And the majority of people vast majority of people who have had coverage for G6 now also have coverage for G7. And that denial conversion program is still in place for those few plans or subparts of plans that are catching up.
I sat in on the Friday investor meeting, which I've never done before. It was really interesting, kind of a different perspective because it was much broader than the things that I usually focus on. But really interesting to see the roadmap. it seemed to me that, the big takeaway for my audience, and I'm laughing as I'm saying this, but when Kevin Sayer announced Direct to Watch by the end of the year, I know people were very excited about that. But I wanted to ask you about the CGM that's coming for people with type 2 who don't use insulin necessarily. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure, Stacey. And maybe I'll talk about a couple of things. Sure. I'll talk about that product specifically and then how we think about that in the context of a portfolio and serving all of those needs across the marketplace. So first, that product, there are 25 million people in the US alone who have diabetes, who are not on insulin and who are not at risk for severe hypoglycemia. So if we look at the most recent CMS coverage expansion, this is a population that's not part of that coverage expansion. And we know from hearing from those people themselves, as well as their clinicians, as well as what the data tells us, including some data here at ADA, that that's a population that can really benefit from a CGM or a continuous glucose sensing product. Now, we also know that their needs are really different from the population who is using insulin. So for this population, those not on insulin and not at risk of severe hypo, they have a couple of specific needs. First and foremost, they are looking for personalized and actionable nutrition and exercise evaluation and advice. And they want insights about that, but they don't want to be interrupted throughout the day by a set of alarms that for them they feel are unnecessary. So for example, they might want more of a longer term evaluation, right, about their nutrition and exercise plan. This is a really highly motivated group of people. They have a deep fear of progressing to injectable therapies and insulin. They are more likely to be making their own decisions about continuous glucose monitoring without advice from a physician. And they really want to feel empowered to take control of their health. So this product will be on the same G7 hardware platform, but the software and user experience will be very different than what we see with our current products and tailored specifically to that population. Now, some people might ask, why are you developing a different solution? Why not just take the same solution you have and try to extend coverage to this group? And I think it really gets to our belief about serving those who can benefit from the technology and our philosophy about portfolio. And that is, we don't believe one size fits all, and we don't believe good enough is good enough. We really believe, and we know this from our years of working closely with people with all kinds of diabetes and all of the research and user experience, that there is an opportunity to meet the needs distinctly for each of these populations, those on intensive insulin therapy and on insulin, those who are, some might say, higher risk, or at least insurance companies would call higher risk. Certainly with our products, we're working to minimize and reduce those risks. And then those who have more of a nutritional outcomes goal in the near term. So we're really committed to bringing the right product to each part of the population that meets their needs distinctly.
I think certainly the people with type 1 understand the different types or different software adjustments that could be made, right? We understand that somebody who's dosing insulin or using an AID system has very different needs from the person who is not yet progressing to the point where they do need insulin, has type 2 diabetes, as you're talking about there. Can you share what better outcomes somebody who doesn't use insulin yet, who put this future product on, are they getting reports back that say, when you ate this for breakfast, this happened? Are they getting reports that say, when you walked, this happened? It just seems, I don't know, I'm kind of dancing around the topic that my husband has type 2 diabetes. Mm-hmm. He wore a Libre for a couple of weeks and he was like, I don't know, he didn't really change his behavior. It seems to me like it's such a big group of people that could benefit. And I guess what I'm asking is, how do you see them benefiting?
Mm-hmm. It is a very big group of people. And one of the things we said in our Investor Day, and we refer to this as our first generation non-insulin product, because we do see over time, and we haven't committed to timelines on this, but we do see over time different versions and iterations of this product to fully over time meet the needs of even the different subpopulations within the big non-insulin population. 25 million people is a lot. And we know that within that, there are going to be segments and groups of people who have distinct needs. And over time, we'll work to continue tailoring this. so that everyone who can benefit from CGM gets the full and maximum benefit for their needs and where they are in their health journey. Now, you asked about specific features. For confidentiality reasons, at this point, we're not sharing detailed features of the product.
I totally respect that. We're interested, and we'll, hope you'll share that soon. But I think I'm also asking, and I don't mean this in a put down in any way for people with type 2. I hope this comes out right. I wonder how engaged, how do you get people with type 2 diabetes who feel like, I don't want to be visible about it. I just don't want to think about it. How do you get that population to be engaged with the CGM? You know that I'm a big fan of choice when it comes to diabetes technology, and I get so excited when there's something new, because if you live with diabetes, you deserve to find the best fit for you. That's just one reason I'm working with Omnipod to help spread the word about what makes it so easy to test their system out. If you want to try an insulin pump or see what life without tubes is all about, you can try Omnipod 5 with no commitment or obligation. And you can try Omnipod even if your current tubed pump is in warranty. No, really, you heard that right. And if it's not right for you, no problem. Omnipod does not tie you down with a contract or a tube. Go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Omnipod logo. Terms and conditions apply. For full safety, risk information, and free trial terms and conditions, also visit omnipod.com/diabetesconnections. Now back to Teri, and she's answering my question about people with type 2 and CGM.
You asked about outcomes specifically with this product. So we haven't done clinical trials with this particular product yet. So I don't have that data to share with you. But what we do know, and we saw even an abstract here at ADA, is there's a real-world evidence study of more than 7,200 people who are not on insulin who use Dexcom CGM. And in that study, we saw significant improvements in glycemic control. And that was in a fairly short time duration, even just over a few months. And so, one of the things for the type 2 population, and my grandmother actually died from complications of type 2 diabetes, and this was long before we had tools like CGM. It was one of my personal responsibilities to go after school every day and make sure that she tested her blood sugar with a finger stick, which now we know, right, how much would that have done, and to dose her insulin for her. So I know how difficult that journey can be. It's really difficult when the only feedback you have is going to your physician every however many weeks and getting an HbA1c number that really doesn't tell you what or how your behaviors are translating into that outcomes. And even people with type 1 diabetes know you can do the same thing one day and the next day and have different outcomes, right? So that insight into how different actions, foods, behaviors, situations, sleep, not sleep, caffeine, stress, the insights into how all of those things affect your glucose, that's what the CGM provides for you. And the CGM is really the only tool we have in the armamentarium that's demonstrated to support and affect behavior change. And for this population, one thing we know from our insights from working with this type 2 customer group is they are highly motivated to do the right thing. They feel like often they're walking in a dark room without a flashlight because they don't always know what that right thing is. And even if they make a food choice that they know might not be optimal, they don't know how to make the trade-offs between when and how much of certain foods they can eat and stay in range. So there is a different level of insight for this population that they haven't really had before. And CGM is the only thing that can provide that right now.
And as you're answering it, it seems like I asked kind of an unfair question because I remember when my son got a CGM, we were in diabetes for 7 years and we didn't know what we didn't know. So that analogy of the flashlight, right? We got this amazing bunch of data that we had never thought about before, and you can take different actions. So I appreciate you answering that. And I hope as you listen, you understood what I was asking about engaging people with type 2. I don't think those folks don't want to be engaged and they don't want to be more active in their own healthcare. A question I get a lot from my listenership is people with type 1 rely so much on CGM. They are nervous when you see the big market and frankly, the big money of type 2, that innovation and the service to type 1 may stall. Can you talk a little bit? I know future plans you may not be able to talk about, but just the commitment to the type 1 community.
Stacey, I'm so glad you asked that. And I can understand how people in the type 1 community might see that when they hear us at Investor Day talking about a big announcement for people who are not on insulin. We say at Dexcom, for example, AID is in our DNA. We have been at the forefront of research and technology development for the type 1 population since the very, very beginning of this company. And we won't ever stop doing that. So although we did announce this new product for the non-insulin population, you also heard Kevin on the stage talk about our portfolio for next generation G-series products as well. We're doing both of those waves and lines of research. It's really one of the things we're excited about, having the size and scale that we now have at Dexcom to be able to support research and development for both of those populations simultaneously. And the truth is we learn between them. We learn an insights for type 2, things that can help us with a type 1 or intensive insulin population and vice versa. So we think it's a great strength. And we think doing both of those things simultaneously is actually going to help us serve all of those populations even better over time. But rest assured, our plans include continued research to continue deliver better and best solutions for people with type 1 and those on intensive insulin therapy.
That's great to hear. I don't know if you can get it all specific. I'm going to guess you can't. Kevin mentioned things like, lower MARD, smaller hardware. To be continued?
I'll have to repeat what Kevin said, and that is we won't provide at this point specific timelines for those features. But yes, those are, when we talk about continued research, lower MARD, better accuracy, better software, smaller footprint, all of those things that Kevin mentioned are absolutely part of our research and development program. And I'll repeat what Kevin said. We're not going to provide timelines at this point, but we are working on all of those things.
He did say, though, that direct to watch is coming by the end of the year. And that was very quick. He just kind of put it in there. And my antenna went straight up because this is such a feature that, as you know, people have really wanted. It was announced a long time ago. Can you talk at all about what that will look like when it comes? Will it just be rolled out? It doesn't need to be a new sensor and transmitter. Would the user have to do anything? I'm curious what that looks like in the rollout.
So then maybe there are a couple of things that I can share. First, Dexcom has always been the leader in connectivity, and we will continue to be not just connectivity to AID systems, as you know, but also to phone, watch, receiver. Dexcom right now is the only system that can connect to multiple receiver and tools at the same time. And so our leadership in connectivity is something we're really dedicated to. We know in today's world of technology, that is central. I cannot share details of any of the technical details of what that direct to watch would look like. But what I would also share and remind is you can of course now see your Dexcom readings on your watch through your phone and the watch connectivity.
But just to ask one more follow-up on that, I would assume the user wouldn't have to do anything remarkably different. They'll get their G7 when it's announced. We just can't say. Okay.
I'll leave it at that. I can't share any
wanted to put
technical
that in.
details
That's
at that
fine.
point. Yeah.
That's fair.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Everyone's asking. I know. It's a hot topic.
Oh.
I know. I know you've had Jake on the podcast talking about this, the connectivity that I think we take for granted now with Dexcom because we've been doing it for so long. This is not easy. It's what our technical team does around the connectivity, the reliability of this connectivity to multiple devices at the same time and share follow. These are really significant research and development and technology efforts. And so I give credit to Jake and our technical team every day. I'm incredibly grateful and impressed for the work they do. They make it look easy. None of this is easy.
It's so interesting to think about the changes. My son started using a Dexcom in 2013 when we only had the receiver. It didn't go to anything else. And I would wiggle it. I would position it in the hall outside his bedroom because I don't like devices in his room. So I would try to, with the RF signal, which was the original, right? And you could get it through a closed door sometimes. So to see where we are now it's really interesting. But before I let you go, I want to circle back to Animas. if you don't mind, which is
Please.
near and dear to our hearts. It was my son's first insulin pump. He had the Animas 2020, and then we switched to the Ping, and then we wound up when Animas was no more. We stopped using it. Although I know people, don't listen, I know people who just recently stopped using an Animas insulin pump. So I don't know how they were getting supplies, but this community is quite creative. But I'm curious, what was it like for you all there during that time? It must have been really difficult. It was just a fun company. It seemed, at least from the outside.
Stacey, every role, every leadership role in every company I've been part of, I learn something new. I take something away. And with my time at Animas, what I took away beyond incredible knowledge, learning about the diabetes community, but also is the importance of really understanding your customer needs firsthand and understanding those needs better than anyone else. And sometimes understanding those needs even before the customer can articulate the needs themselves. And so maybe one story I can share at Animas. So there was another, I won't name, but another really big insulin pump company who really led the entire market. And Animas was a small, scrappy startup trying to find our way. And the technology is really challenging, right, for these products. If you think about, so I have a teenage son. When I think about having to build a piece of durable medical equipment that a teenage boy will wear on their hip 24/7, 365 through all of their athletic activities and rough and tumble, and that device has to be precise and perfect every single time, no matter what happens to it. That's a pretty high bar, right? It's a difficult space for any technology and company. And we looked really hard to say, what could we do that would be different, that mattered most to the customers, to those we were serving? And we identified three things. First and foremost was leading in CGM integration, and that was the connectivity with Dexcom that I mentioned earlier. But second and third were when we sat down with people using the pumps, and in particular the pediatric population, they wanted colors and they wanted it to be waterproof. They wanted to be able to enjoy their lives. And so one of the things that we almost laugh about now, but we're also really proud of, is there were a period of years at ADA and other meetings where the entirety of our booth, and we couldn't afford a big booth, it was a really little tiny space, was a few fish tanks, big fish tanks with fish in the tank and our different colored pumps lined up, brightly colored against the different colored fish to get across the point that we offered waterproof and color, and of course, being close to Dexcom as well at the time. So we learned a lot. It was a very difficult decision, I know, for those involved to have to wind that company down. But as we know, most of those customers were handed over to Tandem, and we know that they take great care to provide those customers what they need.
I loved those fish tanks. I remember that. We went to many Animas events with the fish tanks, and I have an episode about how to choose an insulin pump, not a brand, but what questions to ask yourself and your provider. And the title of that episode is, Can I Just Get the Pink One? Because people care about that. So I have a Dexcom suggestion for what it's worth. You reminded me of this. There was a little hack within Animas that the user, I'm pretty sure it wasn't authorized or anything like that. There was a way to change the music, the alert music. You had to figure out a little bit of programming, but somebody put, I guess we'd call it open source now. They put it online. And you could change the music. It was very tinny, right? It wasn't real music. Maybe the Dexcom alerts and alarms. You could play one of my relatives, I can't say who, has the Darth Vader, the Imperial March as a theme when someone calls them. Like maybe you could put that in when your son is high or something, right?
So you were going to say play Lifting Me Higher or something like that.
Right. You could get as fun as you wanted or as silly as you wanted. So that's another thing we loved about Animas.
I'll take that back.
Okay. Terry, thank you so much for joining me. It's great to start getting to know you. I appreciate you coming on and sharing the information, and I hope we talk again soon.
Oh, Stacey, it was absolutely my pleasure. Thank you.
You're listening to Diabetes Connections with Stacey Sims.
Much more in the show notes over at diabetes-connections.com. You can learn more about Dexcom's announcements at ADA. We really just went through the tip of the iceberg there. And of course, I'll be talking to them. Much more to come in the weeks and months ahead as they move forward to integration with Omnipod and t:slim and more advances with the G7. Just a really quick inside baseball aside here. It's always funny for me to do in-person interviews. Most of my interviews, as you can imagine, I do in my home studio, and they're remote. We use Zoom or Zencaster or another way to connect online. But when I go to these conferences and I do these interviews in person, I think the dynamic is a little different. I wonder if you can hear that as you listen. I know the sound can be a little bit different, but I'd love to get your feedback on that. Up next, little update on Benny, his adventures at camp. You know, with that kid, it is always an adventure. And a little personal news of what we've been up to. I'm so excited that Dexcom G7 is here. I know you probably have a lot of questions about insurance. You are not alone. Dexcom understands how complicated this can seem, and they've made it as simple as possible. Dexcom is the #1 covered CGM brand. You can visit the Dexcom Savings Center for a free benefits check to see what coverage options are available to you. Powerful and simple, Dexcom G7 is proven to lower A1C and help you spend more time in range. Learn more. Go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Dexcom logo. I got to tell you, it was really fun at ADA, people asking me about how my kids are doing. I met a lot of people who have really followed Benny and me, I guess, since I started blogging, as I mentioned, since 2007. So you guys have known him, some of you, since he was 2 years old. Well, he's 18, and he just finished his first month at camp as a lifeguard. He's having a great time. No rescues needed yet, thankfully. Hopefully that will continue all summer long. He is away at a non-diabetes camp for 9 weeks this summer. He did shatter his pump. Oh, I won't go into all the details, but it was just an accident. Big thanks to Tandem for replacing. This is why we can never be out of warranty. But he finally put the Type 1 tactical case on the new pump. I've been nagging him to do that forever. He has always been the kind of kid that he had a spy belt, or it wasn't that brand when he was little, but he had like a little waist pack from ages 2 to, let's say, 12. And then he just shoved the pump in his pocket. But that doesn't work well in this kind of environment. So big thanks to Type 1 Tactical for sending that amazing holster last year. Well, I hope to see them at Friends for Life and I can thank them in person. But Benny's really doing well. I don't hear much from him, which I think no news is good news. He sends me funny pictures, which is the best. I do not have any Dexcom numbers for the summer. We turned that off, and he was only going to be home for 2 weeks before college, so I'm not sure he's going to turn it back on. We'll talk about that. All right, separately, we moved our daughter Leah to her new job. She is an environmental tech for the state of North Carolina, and she's living at the beach for at least the next year. So insert cliche here, time marches on, time flies. I don't know, but I'm really proud of both kids, and it's fun to watch them do their thing. All right, please follow me on social media. We have lots to come from Friends for Life this week. I'm hoping to have a lot of fun posts. And again, Mom's Night Out registration is open for our next 3 cities: Frisco, Texas, Providence, Rhode Island, and Charlotte, North Carolina in February. And please watch for more speaker announcements for each city. We have so much good stuff to come. Thank you, as always, to my editor, John Buchanan from Audio Editing Solutions. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Stacey Sims. I'll see you back here soon. Until then, be kind to yourself.
Diabetes Connections is a production of Stacey Sims Media. All rights reserved, all wrongs avenged.
So much going on this time of year, camp and travel, and it's really important to keep your insulin at the right temperature, even in the extreme heat or cold. We love VIVI Cap, the thermal insulin pen carrying case. It works with any insulin pen. It is interchangeable between pens. It's so easy to use, and it really works. Benny keeps one of these in his bag for his backup insulin pen. He likes it because it's small and lightweight. He doesn't have to do anything to it. Lasts for years without any kind of maintenance. I like it because it protects against heat and cold. It's TSA approved and it's FSA and HSA eligible. If you've never seen this, it really is just a cap. You take off the regular cap or the lid of the pen, whatever you want to call it, and you put on the VIVI Cap, and that's it. It's a 100% money-back guarantee, so you can try it risk-free. Find out more. Go to diabetes-connections.com. VIVI Cap is made by Tempramed. Look for that logo. Let me know what you think.